Hey, how's it going everybody? My name is Colin Peterick with the Jam Lab, and today I'm going to give you a tutorial on a foolproof method to quantize acoustic drums. So, if you're like me, you don't trust the event operations Quantize because there's just too many things that can go wrong, especially with acoustic drums or acoustic samples. And I like to use it with MIDI, but if you want to get it done right, I always do it by hand because although it takes more time right off the bat, it may save you time and headaches just because you know you're doing it right the first time. So I always do it this way. Now, first thing you're going to want to do is highlight all your drum tracks. All your, I got kick, snare, snare top, snare bottom, tom 1, tom 2, ride, hat, and my stereo room mics. Just highlight them all. We're going to create a group, drum group. So as you can see, all of our drums, mute together. We can edit them together, etc. So we're going to work on them as a batch like that. Now the next thing I always do when I start a quantizing project on a track is I'll just go ahead and save as a drum edit, just so if anything goes horribly wrong, we can always go back to before we started this process. Next, make sure your drums are still grouped, and just create a duplicate playlist of them for the same reason. This time we can easily go back if we messed up something the previous step. So on this new playlist, we're going to begin quantizing. You want to make sure that you're in slip mode, but you want to make sure that you're viewing your grid in bars and beats. And the way you do that is just want to make sure that bars and beats are checked here, so that you know this is minutes, seconds, samples. You want to make sure you're looking at bars and beats, and right here is the grid mark you can actually see. When I'm quantizing drums, I usually set it to 16th notes because if you do 8th notes, you'll always be able to zoom in and see downbeats and upbeats like snare and kick, but you won't always see, like this, like a hi-hat, or a little ghost note right there in the snare. So I always go to 16th notes because there you go. There's the ghost note right on the grid mark. I compulsively save after every single thing I do. So let's get started. How does this start? All right, it starts with a nice little buzz roll going in. And yeah, it's a little rushed, so let's just go ahead. One thing you'll notice, I'm going to get rid of this for now. One thing you'll notice about, I'm just going to do like 25 seconds of this song just to demonstrate. Slide this over. Perfect. I do all my edits at once, and then when I'm done with all the edits, then I do all the fades. That's just how I work it. It's faster for me. So, kick is good. We ballpark. You don't want to necessarily zoom in all the way and do that. Just ballpark it, as long as it's pretty darn good. Because you don't want to make it sound so robotic that you lose all the human element. But if you want to get into the quantizing, you're going to want it to be pretty darn close. So, as you can see, I just moved over this that ride symbol, and that brought along with it the kick, or the snare here, which saves me a step. That's great. Now, this ride is rushing, so I'll move that over. This ghost note is rushing. This kick is good. This kick is a little rushing. This snare is a little rushing. Go ahead and move that. So you're just going to want to go ahead and make your little edit points. We can clean up the edits later. This is faster for me. So that looks good. That kick is right on. Those ghost notes came along with it. Perfect. And obviously you're going to want to make edits. There's an edit here from the first edit you make. You always want to make an edit here, after the transient that you want to move, because if I were to just move this like that, well, oops, I just moved the whole drum performance. And we don't want to do that because our drummer played pretty well. We don't want to move everything. It just creates more work for ourselves. So that looks good. Make an edit there. You know, we already have our edit there, so we're good to go. And one other trick you can do is, you know, I don't want to move this snare. I don't want to move this kick drum. So instead of making an edit here and going blah, we can undo and just drag this one over because that clip over here we already moved. So let's just do a little bit more. That kick looks good. That kick looks good. That snare looks good. Ride. Cool, cool. You can do a lot of this, as bad as it sounds, you can do a lot of this without even listening. Do like 20 seconds at a time and then listen afterwards. It's just faster. You can fix your mistakes afterwards. Okay, ghost note. Kick is good. This kick is pretty rushed. Maybe this ghost note could be better. And this will be one that I'll double check by listening. That sounds good. Nice and in time with the grid. Now, again, we can get the snare. It's still a little rushed, so even though we did that, we can still just drag it over. Drag this over. Pretty good. That looks good. This kick, just a hair. Okay, let's stop there. We've done 10 seconds. That's fine for now. Let's get into the editing part. This part is a little more tricky. And by the way, I would do this. I would listen to it. Let's turn the click on so that we can reference, cross-reference. So that sounds good. So I would do that to the whole track, and then I would start editing. So let's pretend I did this to the whole track. Here's how we start editing. And we got our first, fade in, whatever. Okay, here's our first edit point. Now, first thing we're going to do is we're going to check to see if it's a give or if it's a take. This is a take because, as you can see, I have room to go before that transient starts. See? I have a lot of room. This is the easier of the two edits. This is a give edit, and it's easier than a take edit. So you're just going to want to drag this. And by the way, I always edit to the close mic that I'm looking at. So for two reasons. You can see the kick here. The visual cue makes it easy to put an edit there and a crossfade. You wouldn't, and the second reason is you wouldn't want to edit to the room mic. I mean, not that you would anyway, but let's say you were to try to edit to the room mic. Well, the kick is arriving at the room mic later than the close mic, so I'm chopping off this kick completely chopping it off. So you always want to reference your edit based on the transient of the close mic that you are quantizing, I guess you could say. So that was easy. That's our first edit. Perfect. Let's check our next one. Here's the ride. Okay, perfect. This is another give. We have more time. And when you're editing like this, really microscopically, you can fine-tune those quick edits you made earlier. So that's fine. That'll go by great. The goal of this is to quantize and make edits so that the edits go by totally undetectable by the listener, because that's what we want. We do not want clicks and pops and cut off transients everywhere. Let's see about this one. So the snare. Okay, here we go. This is our first take. As you can see, we don't have extra room to go with. If we were to do a crossfade at the ride, you'd hear a flam. You hear that? We don't want that. So I call this a take edit because we don't have any room. We actually have to take off here and extend the timing of in between transients there. So it's a little bit harder to do sometimes. So I usually like to go to right before, zoom in a little bit, right before you see the transient. That's usually the spot where the amplitude is at the lowest point, so you're not going to hear any clicks or pops. So let's check that out. I'll do this one first so we can fully appreciate it. This is a ghost noted snare. Again, a little bit of a take edit. So we're going to go right to right before the transient. There's one more. Okay, perfect. This is a give edit. So this one's a no-brainer. We can just go straight to the edge of the transient. Now let's listen to that take edit that we just did. Here's the whole thing so far. Perfect, right? So then just keep going down the line. That's a take. We need to borrow. We need to borrow from this side of the waveform to right before the transient. Make a little crossfade. This is another take before the transient. Okay, just go on down the line. Cool. As you can see, these are just no-brainers. With gives, you have more than enough space to make up for. Just go right before. This is a ride, so just go right before the transient. Make a fade. No-brainer. No one will ever be able to tell that that's an edit. Same thing on that ghost note. Kick is a little ahead. So as you go in, you can just fine-tune as you go. Check your work as you go. Perfect. So it is a time-consuming process, but if the project calls for it, if you're planning on adding a lot of post-production MIDI work or track stuff like that, and you want it to be perfectly quantized, this is how I always do it. If you want to add acoustic drums, and this same process can be used for other instruments. All right, we're almost done home stretch here. So the kick, that crash, we can just keep this going out because there's nothing afterwards, so no need to edit. This goes out here, and this is where we will take a break. And listen. Sounds really good. So after you sort of do that to the whole track, I've only done it for the first 10 seconds, but I've gone through, I've made rough edits between transients that needed to be moved. I moved them into approximate space, and then I went through and I made all the crossfades, did all the give and take editing, and made sure that the edits are not audible to the listener, because the whole point of editing drums is to make it so you can use it in a track and you don't want to hear a bunch of pops and clicks. So after you've done it to the whole track, you can just go ahead and make another playlist, another duplicate playlist of the drum track. Highlight the whole drum track, assuming you finished it all. Shift Option 3. Render it down. Consolidate it. And now you've got your nice, quantized, perfectly quantized to the grid acoustic drum track with multiple microphones. Ah, beautiful. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.